Hi, this is The Dark Tangent. The speech you're about to listen to was originally recorded back at DEF CON 1, 1992 at the Sands Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. Now, the Sands has since been blown up to make room for something new, but the speeches live on. All rights are reserved except for educational uses only. If you'd like more information about DEF CON, please contact us at dt@defcon.org or visit our website at www.defcon.org. Now, get ready to sit back and listen to a great speech, and I hope to see you at a future DEF CON. Woohoo!
Anyway, I hope it won't be a disappointment that this is not a theoretical or some kind of philosophical talk. This is about how to break into
Close your eyes.
This is strictly UNIX right now, because that's just really all I care about these days. I work for some microsystems, and some people have asked me, why do I talk about how to break into systems? Because that's what I do. I protect the sun from people breaking into systems. But I'm also like to think that I'm a hacker, just like a lot of you out here, and I think that it's very important to share information. And with I think a lot of the problems we face are that people don't communicate, and both sides of the fence, hackers and non-hackers. And I think just the freedom of information, freedom of ideas is a very powerful thing. I'm all for that. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. This is probably going to be really trivial for some and too hard for others, and some people won't care. But if you don't care about breaking into Unix systems, you can just leave the room, because that's all it's going to be about. There's not going to be any MVS or VMS or any of that garbage.
All right.
So first of all, I'm going to just go over a tour of the internet. Some of the sites I've seen get broken into. I used to work for Search, as well as working for Sun, and I've seen a lot of sites broken into, and I've done my share of, what won't be covered, I'll just go over some things I won't talk about. Talking about knowledge and how to acquire information, and what a valuable tool it is. Some simple remote hacks on how to break into systems, some a little more interesting techniques, and some really neat stuff I like and I've seen. And all these things I've either done myself or I've seen them being done. And just as a note, if anyone in the crowd says, well, I have this other really neat way of breaking into the system, I'd be happy to hear about it. And if you've broken into Sun, I'd be happy to hear about that. Really, if you've broken into Sun or wherever, I'm more interested in just finding out about how people do it. I'm not going to turn you in or anything like that. I just want to get know what's going on. Once you're on the system, just a real brief. This is mostly just remote stuff, but once you're on the system, I'll just tell you about some little tricks and techniques, and then I'll tell you about the opposition, what we do and what other people do, and what I've seen done against you. Now I made this thing up, and I realized the mill wasn't in there. I don't know why I missed this. Just some things I've seen being broken into, or again, I've toured myself. Just about any site. This is just a short list I put together, and hundreds and hundreds of sites, probably thousands of sites I've seen broken into. Just to show, and most of these sites have been broken into by really simple methods. Nothing really tricky or fancy, which I think is a shame. I like it. If you're going to break into something, you might as well make it neat. You might as well do something that no one else has done before. Cracking passwords is just not a whole very interesting to me.
Waste of CPU.
I'm sorry?
Waste of CPU.
Yeah, waste of CPU. Well, it's one of the big things I've seen more and more at Sun is social engineering. People call up people and say, hey, I'm Joe Blow, system engineer, and I need root password to the system in order to get backups made or something. And oh sure, I'll give you the password. And that's something that's really uninteresting to me. That's like, well, there's no challenge. People are easy to fool and to spoof. So I'm not going to worry about that. Trojans, worms, viruses, I'm all for them, but I'm not going to talk about them. They're not usually used to break into systems, and that's what I'm interested in here. Cracking passwords, trivial stuff. Grab crack if you don't have it. Windowing stuff. Most system crackers that we've seen don't have access to Xterm or anything like that on their attacking systems. So some of the really neat things you can do with Xterm and Motif and Sun Windows and Sun View and that kind of stuff, you just never see being actually done to an attacking machine, which I think is a shame. But the so I'm not going to cover that because it's mostly not used. UUCP, we see a little bit of that, but for the most part, it's real simple stuff. A lot of configuration problems, and again, it's not a very interesting thing for me. And I won't talk too much about bugs because a bug is just like you said. You know, it comes out, you use it, it gets fixed. You know, a new bug comes out. You know, no big deal. There are tons of them out there, and they will always be out there. And a lot of this stuff I'm talking about, I'm going to be putting out a tool, a remote probing tool, that should cover at least some, if not a lot, of the things I'll be talking about, and gathering information on things. And this will be posted, you know, whenever I get around to it.
That's a good day.
Yeah, you know, I used to say, well, it'll be in the fall, you know, but I learned long ago after writing cops that release dates just keep sliding and sliding, son. Some of the real, if you don't use these tools and you're trying to get into a system, you know, you're missing out big time. RPC info is one of the best things you can use, you know, against a remote system. It shows you what's running, shows you defensive software that's on there, like Sun's ARM or other things. Shows you like RexD is going on, a whole bunch of things, NFS, YT-bind, YT-serve, all that kind of stuff. Showmount's another really good one. And so I'm going to go through some examples in some of these a little bit later, but SendMail, any of the daemons, you can connect to the daemon, find out the version of the daemon, and usually find out quite a bit about the host, your target in general. Find out what the operating system is, what the CPU is, all that kind of stuff. You can also go to the NIC and request information through that. And anything you can get is great. TFTP, UUCP, same kind of stuff. And you can just more of the same. Anything you can use to get information on your target makes breaking into the thing an order of magnitude easier, because you use the same techniques. What seems to happen is people will kind of choose targets at random, and they'll try, you know, the same thing against this target, doesn't work, go to the next target, the same thing. And eventually they'll break in because a lot of targets are insecure. But ideally, you would like to be able to select a target, stick to it, go through all your bags of tricks, and eventually, you know, really see if you can break into the system or not, rather than, you know, kind of haphazardly kind of going about it. And this is what, in my job, a lot of what I do is breaking into systems, because we have 30,000 internal hosts, and that's a lot of people and a lot of machines to keep track of. And so when something happens, someone gets into our network, oftentimes I don't know who the system administrator for the machine is. And so the easiest thing to do is just break in, you know, cloak myself, make myself invisible to everyone, and kind of sneak around and look what's going on out there. So these techniques are being used by me all the time, and when we also do packet tracing on attackers, we'll see this stuff used all the time. Once you get into Sun, it's pretty easy to go around. It's pretty insecure inside, but we have the one firewall, which we try to keep secure. Probably the simplest thing you can do, and you can all read this from back, but basically it's, if something has a plus in your host.equip file, which certain software vendors do, or even if your system is trusted by this remote system, or if you have the netgroups dog or some other things, that trust is a real thing that I'll talk about later. But bin is a great account. If you have control of the machine and you have the account bin, the way trust works is that if you have an account on both systems, the same name and the same user ID, then it lets you log in without a password. So as bin, in this case, it is RSH, the victim.com, and I executed a CSH-I. And this is a great command to use, because what this does, when you log into a system this way, it doesn't leave any utemp, doesn't leave any wtemp, doesn't leave last log, that kind of stuff. This is invisible. The only thing that shows up is the process. And what this does is it forks off a C shell with an interactive option with it. Again, you look at the etc directory once you're on the system, and you notice it's owned by bin. This is true for a lot of systems. Well, what's in the etc directory but the password file? So you go to the password file, you create a root account, overwrite the password file, or actually should be appending to the password file, execute to that account, and you're in this root. And yeah, it's pretty trivial, but
don't they usually root own the password file?
Root owns the password file, but it doesn't matter because you can move the password file away because you own the directory. So you move it. I don't even know if I moved the password file to an old password file and then catted another one onto the hole that's left. As long as you own the directory, you're good to go. NFS is an incredibly great way to break into systems. It's pretty trivial once you're on the system to get root and use any number of bugs and that kind of stuff. But what you use the showmount command to showmount honestly shows what's exported to various places. Popular things are like CD-ROMs. Some people use anonymous directories. A lot of people will export home directories of users. And this is where you want to take a look for. In this case, you have something exported to. I put everyone, but it could be just to the machine you happen to have broken into. Someone your target is exporting NFS directories to you. You mount the NFS directories to your local thing, and since you're root, NFS, the way it works is that you cannot access user files over NFS if you're root. That's the little protection it gives you. It just gives you permission denied. But since you're root, you can also, you do an ls and it'll show you, like this user has Joe has a user ID of UID of 1001, and that's what shows up. What you can do is you can create a local password entry with the number 1001 as the UID, and then when you do an ls, it'll show up as this. Well, it should show up. I made this slide right. This will show up as Joe. Because now you have a local account called Joe, and your local system knows what these things belong to. Then you can SU to Joe, add a plus to the ROS entry, do whatever you want to do to this person's account, then log into the remote machine. I'm sorry?
So, welcome.
Yes, welcome. Welcome to Target, yes.
Would you rather put a plus into a .rs file?
I believe I did. I did. Yep. Actually, there's pluses and minuses to some of that. Some sites modify their stuff so that pluses don't work. So you can add the single site you're at or whatever. But once you get in, you're going to nuke it regardless anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Anonymous FTP. This is a great one. A lot of sites use anonymous FTP, and it's really easy to misconfigure anonymous FTP. You can have there's an ETC. What anonymous FTP basically does is it creates a little virtual UNIX machine out there, and you log into it, and you're kind of caged in this little environment. But if you can write to the home directory of UECP, really neat things can happen. Or if you can write to the password entry also, but this is more common, that they'll keep the home directory of FTP writable. I have there's a marvelous thing in mail that's called a well, you can execute programs when you mail someone something. Prime example of this is the vacation program. You mail someone to something and say user who will not be in their office for 5 days, etc. How that works is you have in your .forward file a little pipe to a command. So what you can do though is you can execute any command if you have control of that forward file. So we create a little forward file that mails to Zen the password file. You can execute any command. Password file is an easy one because you can then crack the passwords and get in. You go and FTP to the victim. You take a look at the permissions and you notice the dot directory is indeed world writable. You put the forward file, the new forward file, in the FTP's new forward file, and then you just mail a ping message to that. What that'll do is it'll execute the command, mail you the password file, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to set up, and then you're home free. So, and again, the emphasis being that you want to get access to their system. You want to be able to execute commands on the remote system. And once you execute a command on their system, you should be able to compromise everything in the system. There's no excuse for if you go to all this trouble to get on the system, there's 1,000, 1,000,001 ways to break into the system once you're there. The real hard part is actually getting there. And you can get there many different ways. But have some pride. Decode alias. Now, some people wondered why is the decode alias or any alias the same thing you can do in the etc aliases file. You can execute commands. You can have a mail alias, send mail to that alias. In the case of UU decode, it decodes the message and puts it wherever the decoded file tells it to. Well, that by itself is problem enough, because you can overwrite files, any files in the system that are owned by usually user nobody or UCP or whatever runs the alias. But it's really cool because on quite a few systems, the aliases.page and aliases.dir files, which are the DBM files for the alias in the system, are writable. So you create a little message. In this case, again, I'm trying to grab the password file. So I do a cat Etsy password, type it to mail, and I'm sorry. The first thing in the line is bin : which means when I send mail to user bin, it will execute this command that I'm typing to. So create an account called bin, type it to this command, which mails me the password file, and then I run a new aliases. That's the last thing I do, because you can run as many commands as you want, as long as they're full and separated. So what this does is it executes this command, runs the new aliases, I'll get to your question, and then basically destroys the tracks of what you brought, because you wrote over a file. The new aliases then writes over the file that you just wrote over after you execute the command. I'm sorry?
Do you have to be root to run the aliases, or are
No, you don't.
assuming that?
No, you don't. New aliases is a command any user can execute on most systems. Because it's not really a problem generally.
Because that's assuming you have write permissions to the alias file to begin with.
In some systems, yes. In some systems, no. Because the Etsy aliases file is owned by root and usually only readable by root, and readable and writable by root. So if the user runs new aliases, it doesn't do anything. All it does is just creates a new DBM file for the aliases. So it doesn't matter. This is just a handy way of covering up your tracks for the attacker. But so in this case, you create the new aliases command right here. What I did was just a little bit of an arcane thing to create a little message that I wanted to stuff into the mail file. But you don't have to go to this trouble. I just wanted to make it nice and clean.
What does the -0 do with the aliases?
Well, in this case, it says use this. I think it says use this as this new temp file as the place to stuff the stuff you're doing, because the new alias command, you can give it any file as an option. In this case, I use whatever, but you can't write to the etc directory, where it puts it by default. So you have to tell it to write it somewhere else. In this case, I chose temp as an alternate directory, and just do man on new aliases, and we'll play this. And then you encode the message I want to send to the thing, and then I mail to the decode alias, which is the purpose of this whole exercise. And what this does is it installs this alias in the system now, a mail alias in the system, with the name bin. My next command. And the reason I use send mail instead of normal mail is because sometimes when you send mail to a remote system, depending on how it's configured, just normal mail won't work unless you're the same user as what you're mailing to. So if I mail a Zen to bin, it's not going to believe that I'm really the right person to write to this file. So I just send mail as user bin. And there are many tricks to this. But I send mail to this thing, to the bin account that I just created, and execute the command. A little convoluted at first glance, but this is, if you know anything about UNIX, this should be really intuitive stuff. At least it is to me. I don't know. I don't want to bog everyone down with details. Like I said, some people say, "What the hell am I talking about?" Probably, maybe most of you. I don't know. But the important thing is that there are a lot of ways to break into systems, and you don't have to always use passwords and these really simple methods to break into systems. All of these methods I use don't require any bugs, don't require anything except you might say stupidity on the part of your target, but whatever you want to call it. And I prefer cleverness over brute strength. Interesting techniques. The problem with some of these is that they're difficult to show. I can't really show you how to exploit RexD, but if you look at the manual page for RexD, or if you look at like a copy of Frac, they have some programs that have exploited RexD, so that there's code out there that does this. But basically, trust me when I say you do an RPC info on a host, and you see the RexD daemon running, you can execute any command on that system as any user except for root. So that's a really huge security hole. And there's, unless they're running secure RPC, which no one does, that's the way it is. So CRXD, that should wave the flags, go out, grab a copy of these programs, and just run it on that system. NIS NIS is also called Yellow Pages in the old days, and it has no authentication whatsoever built into it. You can basically set yourself up, and the way NIS works is you have a master NIS machine, and it has clients that share these databases that the master sets up. So typically you'll use this for password files, or host files, or mail aliases, which I'll show you later on. And you can, if you know the name, there's something called a domain name that NIS uses. And if you know the domain name of the NIS remote machine, you can get any map. You can request it, because that's how the clients work. They say, I'm just booting up. Here's the name to prove who I am, just like a password. And send me the password file, or send me the host file, or the alias file. And there's some really interesting tricks you can do by even telling master NIS machines that I'm really your master, and don't believe yourself. I am now in control, and you will believe me. And you can, if you're familiar with the phrase pushing out alias maps, which means if you're a master, you can tell your clients, okay, here's the new data, so take this as gospel. You can do that to masters as well. Again, it gets a little convoluted to talk about in this real short talk, but it is not a hard thing. Mail aliases, local or NIS. I'll go over. This is really similar to before when I talked about the UNIDecode alias. Basically, what you can do is you can write to an alias file, or write to a DBM file, which is the .page and .dir thing. You can execute commands. And the really interesting thing is, like, I had a workstation Sun, and I was an NIS client or something. And I thought, okay, I took out the plus in the password file, which means don't use the NIS password. And I took out all the stuff. I didn't trust anything, but I was the NIS client. What this means, this particular thing, which I figured out one day, if I'm on the master and I have control of all the clients, even if they don't accept the password maps, even if they don't accept anything, because a little known fact is that there are mail aliases that get sucked in to the clients. And the mail aliases are kept on the master machine, and they're pushed out to all the clients. And there's really nothing, well, there's one thing you can do to block this, which I'll say in a moment, but in normal circumstances, you cannot block this from happening. So if you have control of the master, you create a new alias, you push the aliases, which just typing make aliases pushes out all the new mail aliases, and then you echo a command to the remote machine. Since it's your client, it has accepted the new mail aliases, you can now execute commands on that client. The one thing you can do is kind of an arcane thing in your sunmail.cf file. If you're really thrilled about it, I can tell you how to block this, but it's not a really interesting thing. It just depends on a bug on a design flaw and NIS to block it. But you're more interested in getting NIS in, so yeah. But the important thing to note is, again, and I'll talk a little bit more about NIS. NIS Plus addresses some of these topics. NIS Plus is the new NIS from Sun. But NIS is not just the Sun thing. Just about any software vendor runs some version of NIS, and these techniques will work on all software. The problem being is that you really need to, getting control of a master is not always an easy thing, because naturally people try to protect those machines a little better. But once you have control of a master, you do have control of all the machines underneath it, and that's a very powerful idea and technique. On to even more stuff, and I know I'm kind of zooming through these, but to me these are all like old hat now, and I get tired of looking at the same slides over and over again. So, well, not the slides actually, because I made up the slides right before this. But I get tired of these same techniques over and over again, and I get tired of people not using these techniques, and so I'm a little frustrated, And if I see another break-in, people using guest as a password. You know, I slap the machine. You know, because I go to a lot of trouble when someone breaks into a machine. There's a lot of stuff that has to go on. You know, I slap on the old packet tracing software. You know, do a routing around the machine, and you know, at least make it worth my while. You know, have a little bit of inventiveness. You know, and some of these things are pretty hard to catch. I'll mention some ways to hide your tracks too. Now these things are getting more and more difficult to catch up what's going on. Boopparamd is a program when you have a diskless client. If you're and when I mean a diskless client, if you have an NFS master and you have client machines flying around on your network that have no local disk on their machines, and basically they mount their home directories, they mount their root directories, they mount everything from this one main workstation. There's a program called Boopparamd, and this is another thing to use RPC info for, to look for. It shows if a machine is running Boopparamd, you know, hey, you know, there are diskless clients about, and this is an excellent, this is an insecure network because of that. And the reason is when the NFS server is running, cranking along, and you boot up your diskless client. When you boot up your diskless client, it sends out a request. Hey, I'm here, you know, give me my files now. And this Boopparamd is a bootstrapping technique where the server grabs all the stuff and shoves it down the pipe to the client. Well, suffice to say, and a quick glance at code, it's only a couple of lines to write something that will spoof this. We're surrounded by miles of RPC stuff, which has to go with any RPC program. But there's just this little sequence. You can just say, hey, I'm a diskless client. Let me have all the information and trust me. And you can basically grab any NIS map you want, because that's how it's sent across. All this NIS stuff, all diskless clients use NIS maps. And the NIS maps have to include the password map, because if you're a diskless client, you need a password file. Okay, so among other things, you're getting not only the password files, but anything else you want that's going across that line. These things I don't see a whole lot of, except the last one. We're starting to see a lot more of that. NFS, there's a lot of protocol bugs in NFS, and some really interesting stuff. I'd like to see someone do some work on really beating on NFS. There's some kind of cool bugs that people have been working on, and I'm sure some of you have used and seen. There's like an NFS program that lets you, set your user ID and kind of probe machines. It relies on various Sun bugs, but there's a lot of fruitful ground still waiting to be attacked here and investigated. Trust, I'll go in the next slide, and I'll talk about that. ICMP, ICMP is a network device, TCP/IP, where if on the network a host is trying to contact a remote host, and it says it's tried to send a message and it doesn't get a reply, so then it sends a ICMP disconnect or redirect, or depending on what's going on, and the connection is severed. So if you see someone remotely logging into a machine, you can nail their connection, log them off the machine. That by itself is not a big deal. But if you're on the same machine as the person that is remotely logged in, and you have a packet tracer or something like that running at the time, and they try to re-log in, then you can grab their password. You can, I'm not much into harassing people, so which I see this being used more and more for. But again, it's certainly a tool that you can use, and it is yet another valuable tool in your little arsenal. Now, trust is a real. This is how you can break into just about any site on the internet, because except those behind firewall, unless they design their firewall not very carefully. The reason. The way, and when I say trust, I mean our hosts, host.equiv, Xhost, window host trusting mechanisms, like VTs, INetD wrappers, and other forms of access control on commercial software I've seen. They all rely on a couple of different mechanisms for finding out who you are when you send a packet to these people. Basically, if you're running NIS, it queries the NIS server first. You know, I just received an IP address, or I just received a host name. Give me the corresponding host name or IP address so I can verify that's really who it is. Well, once that's done, it'll look at your local host file. You'll see the same thing, because every machine has a few hosts, usually in their host file. And then it will go off to DNS and make requests from that. I'm not sure with some NIS and DNS have strange workings on, and with some machines the ordering will be different. Some machines you cannot resolve things with NIS and DNS, but for the most part that's pretty much how it works. But what you can do is, if you know where they're getting their information from, you can go to where they're getting their information from, and if you can break into that machine, then you're home free. DNS works, and DNS is distributed naming service. The way DNS works is it has all these machines all around the internet, and if I tell it to cert.org, DNS scurries over and queries the server for cert.org, and it gives me back the IP address, and then I can make the connection. And cert.org has nothing to do with when I tell it to it until I actually make the connection. So if I can control that DNS server, I can, when someone makes a request, an authentication request, then I can make them think they're talking to any machine that I want. Or I can conversely make them trust me into thinking that I'm some machine that I'm not. Again, this is a little involved, but if you want to look at this, there's some RFCs for DNS. There might be one for NIS. I don't honestly know. But in this case, the whole concept is with reverse lookup. And the way reverse lookup works, again, you're querying with an IP address and you get a host name, or vice versa. And in this case, I just showed a little thing. You're trying to get into a victim's system, and unfortunately, they have VT's wrappers around it. And normally, you'd be able to get in the system, but as soon as you try to connect to this thing, it closes off the connection. So, what we do is we go over to, in this case, I'm just choosing, assuming that your victim machine trusts IBM, IBM.com. If you have control of the NIS maps, if you have control of the NIS maps, you have an entry that looks something like, 192.9.9.1 is DefMonster, which is happens to be the host you're on right now. Or if you're looking at DNS, you look at basically the numbers are reversed, and it has the reverse in address thing pointer to DefMonster. So you just change. You can change the lower line or the upper line depending on which you control. Change that around to point now to IBM.com. And this is another thing. If you're an NIS master on someone, you can always get to the clients if they trust any machine in the world, because you control what they believe. You control when they make a host name lookup. You control all that. So in this case, we change my machine, my attacking machine, to point now to IBM.com. So when I do an RSH to this machine, it says, oh, okay, I'm 192.9.1. Who is this? The lookup returns back IBM.com. Okay, I'm set. I'm in. This is just like one tiny little kernel of this field. This is a very rich field to explore. There are some papers that I only wish were published, and a lot of this information I either got it myself, or same with all my bugs and information, or people will send it to me. And sometimes people will send me information saying, well, you can't let this out. And if I want to get more information from people, I don't let it out. But I try to give as much out as I can. So there's some really neat papers out on this that if you ever run across, I would highly suggest looking at. But just with the concept, with reverse lookups and DNS and NIS, I would hope that you'll be able to do a little thinking, and that's what hacking is all about. Think, okay, this is how the mechanism works. So let's examine this, and let's see how we can do this. And I don't have a lot of respect for people who just grab the latest bugs off the, the latest frac, whatever, and run it on a system and get what they want. To me, that's not really hacking. That's playing around and that kind of stuff. But hacking is learning, it's sharing, it's exploring. To me, at least, everyone's has their own viewpoints. Once you're actually on a system, I'm not going to belabor the 9,000 ways you can get root on a system. There are many bugs, run cops, run crack, any number of ways. And if you're worth your salt in anything, getting root on a system once you're on it should be pretty trivial. Once you're on a system, however, there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens once you log onto a system behind the scenes that you might not think about or you might not care about. There was an excellent paper written in the latest frac by, I don't have the thing with me, but it was on how to hide your tracks and how to, what actually goes on once you're on a system. I'll cover it just briefly, but most of these techniques require that you be root on your system that you break into. So if you're really good, you want to make sure you got your target. You want to make sure you can get root once you're on there. And then once you're on there, you want to be able to hide yourself because you do not want people knowing where you are. There are certain things you cannot do without incredible effort, but there are a lot of things you can do. When you monitor system crackers, one of the first things that I'll see a lot of people do is SH. And why they did that? Okay, well, there's something called a .history, which records your commands. So when you log out, it records, grepping through passwords for null passwords, all that kind of stuff. So you have to just be careful. There's the corn shell uses history mechanism, bash. All the shells have their own individual history mechanisms. But this is a real trivial thing, nuke the history file or set the history to be 0 or something like that before you start scurrying around. Two very important files in Unix, utemp and wtemp. One of them controls what the system thinks is currently on the system. So when you do a finger or who or anything like that, when it shows that list of users, that's where it's getting information from. The other one is when you type a last, and then you have the last logging of users. That's the file that keeps track of that. Now, in a lot of systems, the utemp is writable by everyone, so you can muck around with that file. But again, in this paper, they had a couple of programs that would modify these files. I highly recommend you look up the latest frac. And so you can modify these files and basically remove tracks of yourself. And so people can still do a PS and look at your, user Joe is using or user Jane is using resources in the system, but it makes things a lot easier for you. And one of the best ways to detect someone who's been on the system once they've been broken into is just do a last. And if you see from GNU.ai to edu or whatever, some logins from that place, you think, oh well, no one on our site is logged in from there, must be an intrusion. There's a whole lot of things you can. Normal UNIX auditing really sucks. There's only a couple of things you can do. But if you start beefing up your auditing, if you're a system administrator, and you start turning on various little keys and bells and whistles, there's a lot of information out there that can gather on you. The problem usually is that they don't look for it unless they know they've been broken into. But again, the last com keeps track of all the commands typed. That's an incredibly useful thing. If you're trying to track someone down and you know they've been on your system, knowing what they typed is like the key to success. I believe the paper goes over a little mechanism to go nuke those too. Init wrappers, the bane of a lot of people's existence. This is probably the single most important thing that you can have as a system administrator, is to put these wrappers on your system, because logging where the connections are coming from is key to both knowing something's going on and shutting them out once that you're aware of their presence. But most of these things are just kept in ASCII files. So if you know they're running and there are methods to detect this, go over there and modify those files. A lot of this auditing stuff is run by syslog, and And you can kill off the syslog daemon or look at where a syslog keeps its records. And you might find some interesting things there. Tripwire and cops both have like file integrity checkers. But again, for the most part, unless you're a little bit more clever as an administrator, you can just go to the database, remove the entry or change the entry, say you're putting in a new login, a new shell, whatever like that, so you can come in later on. Most of the time, you can just go over there, make an entry, update the database, and they'll never know. So, once you get on a system, you say, well, let's look for the wrappers. Let's look for are they running cops or tripwire or anything like that. You look for what they're using against you, because again, knowledge is a wonderful thing, and if you know what's out there being used against you, even if you cannot remove your traces, you know that they know about you now. And so it might be time to get away or change directions. C2, B1, all the government stuff generate massive amounts of audit logs, and usually they're not a problem because no one can read the logs also. It's really pathetic. For a standard system, single-use system, you're going to generate megabytes of data per day on just yourself, and your own little thing. It tells you everything, though. It really does. But most people don't know how to read it, and when you're on a multi-user system, a lot of people logging in, it's usually not worth the time of the administrators, and they can't keep the disk space up. But it can be used against you, and if you're really determined and the system is what you want to hit, and they're running this kind of stuff, you might consider going over those logs and nailing them also. This takes a long time to go through all this stuff, so obviously automating programs to do your dirty work is the way to go. Packet tracing. This is my favorite way of keeping track of machines. The Ethernet, all the packets are scurrying across the Ethernet. And you can monitor a machine, all inbound connections, all outbound connections, this way, that way, whatever. As an attacker, A, you don't know what's being done. There's no way you can tell, for all practical purposes, that you're being monitored. And B, you're really hosed if you don't know they're onto you, because now everything you do, every site you attack from this new site, they're going to be notifying, or they're going to be tracking you back down, doing phone traces, that kind of stuff. So mostly I just put it as be aware that it's out there, and it's pretty trivial to get keystroke logs of users that are attacking the systems. All major sites that I've talked to have their own systems and their own software that do this. So if you're coming in and you've been on for a long time, you're thinking things are cruising along, and things start going wrong in other sites, you might think that, well, they're doing some kind of monitoring on you. And you can go to the site, the host that's doing the monitoring, but even if you nuke the monitoring tools or the logs there, they still have all the information like before. And it's a very difficult thing to get around. Just a real brief thing on how the other side lives and what they do to detect you. And this is pretty much just based on case history. In the 1,000 break-ins or whatever I've worked with, this is pretty much how it goes. There's a lot of system administrators really know their machines very well, and they live on there. They've been on there for many years, and they just know things. And if they do a process, they do a PS, and they know something's going on, they're gonna find out. A lot of it is based on luck, though. Most of the time, just something weird will happen on the system. I mean, because of a file you may have modified, or just something happens that's just a little out of the ordinary, and maybe a new system administrator is on the machine, and they're just poking around to see what's on there, and they find something by sheer luck. And a lot of break-ins are detected this way. But it's just as good as getting caught by any other way. I mean, inside knowledge, again, this ties in with expertise. Not only expertise at UNIX, but on their particular systems. If they have a lot of knowledge of that system in particular, anything that changes, anything at all, they're going to notice. If they're good. Obviously, a lot of them aren't. Users, if you compromise a user's account, they log in the next time and it says last login, 3 a.m., last night. And every once in a while, a user will call in a call saying, hey, someone broke into my account. or this wasn't me that logged in here. More to the point, they don't know what's going on. Logs and tools are great things, but no one really ever uses them until after the fact. So it's not until after they know they've been broken into do they usually detect something. The only time really I see logs being used much are when sites are really well protected and you're setting off alarms left and right. And they say, they look at their logs, they get mail from their logging demons, and they say, oh, someone from this site is attacking me. But it's very rare when you break into a system and the logs are actually the things that trip you up. They're there, they're useful, but human nature is just not enough time to search around your system. And there's not a whole lot of tools that can detect intruders. It's a very difficult problem. There have been lots of papers and lots of things written, but for better or for worse, you don't really have to worry about software detecting it for the most part. And this last thing, just in what people do to defend themselves, and this is what we tell our system administrators and just general good advice, vigilance is the key to detecting someone on your system. And the reason I say this, if there's some way you can make the system administrator less vigilant, say, there's your target, and they monitor a couple of different machines, you can do all these attacks or clumsy attacks on other machines, and then sneak over here and slide in through on your target. Then they're going to be looking at these other machines, and they think, oh, they're not going to notice maybe a log entry over here of a successful login or someone coming into this account. So, try to understand what's out there and what you're up against. They do a lot of written correspondence between each other. They don't do a lot of posting to the net. I've been broken into, but they'll do a lot of word of mouth because a lot of system administrators know each other through being on the net for all those years. And this is, I think, where the system cracker or hacker community really falls down on your side. I see a lot of publications. Here's how to break into the system. Here's the systems I've broken into, or et cetera, et cetera. But no one ever talks about their failures. And I think it's really important to discuss. I broke into the system. They caught me because of this. Even if you know, sometimes you don't know. But it's really vital because the same mistakes happen over and over again. You do something stupid. Everyone else is the last person you want to know about this. But it's really important to you put out frac and all these things. Put out successes as well as failures because those are some things you can really learn about. Because I see the same stupid things happen over and over again. And some of the things I've talked about before, especially with logs and abusing accounts, misusing resources, when anyone would spot it, let alone a good system administrator. And I've spoken and written the same kind of stuff. You might tell a friend, oh, I got trashed in the system, but it's important to try to understand why you got kicked off the system, because if you can understand why you got caught, you can A, not do it the next time, and B, decide if they're going to keep coming after you. Because if you got caught because you misused resources, that's one thing. But if you got caught because user changes, if you get shut out of the system because the user changed their password, and you're just shut out all of a sudden, you don't know what the reason was. So if you can ferret out what's out there, that's a really critical key to successful and long life, which is a rare thing in the system cracker world. And the tools they use, the same kind of tools that you'll use. A lot of cops, a lot of crack, a lot of basic tools. There are a lot more tools that you people pass among each other. Mostly breaking code. This is a bug in the system, and I think that's really good. I think personally, I think you should post these things to the net rather than just trying to keep them secret. Because not only are you keeping the information from other people, that are potentially your allies, but the holes will not. Ideally, I would like to see the hackers, like I said, doing some good for everyone. I think there's a lot of good to be done out there. You find holes, you post things to the net, and you shake up the vendors or shake up the administrators of the machines, and make them realize you're not out there trying to wipe out their system. So some of you might be, but That's your own stuff. I think that's all for the slides.
What's your email address, Dan?
zen@def.corp.sun.com, or just zen@sun.com rather will do, or dan.farmer@sun.com, or any number of ways. Yeah.
What's the file that keeps all the process that are running currently?
What file keeps the process?
Yeah.
Information. Well, there's in Solaris. There's a new file that's kept in. I don't remember the directory that keeps some of the process information, but most of the process information is kept.
PROC?
I'm sorry?
PROC?
Oh, okay, proc, okay. Proc's the name of the file. But most of the information is kept in memory, in kernel memory. So, a good thing to do, I wonder why I haven't seen more of this, but... Well, right, but you don't really need to do that, because what do you really want? You want someone, when they run PS, not to see you. Okay? If you can edit the process table, you have root privileges, right? Why not just create a PS command that shows everything but you? And, you know, just move the other PS command to the side. When you go out of the system, move it back in. And then they'll do PS and net stats and all this kind of stuff. PS and net stats are the two things you want to worry about, really, assuming you got the other logs. Because, you know, no one, while they're looking for something, no one's going to be, like, running checksums on the programs they run. They're going to be doing it maybe daily or whatever like that. But while you're on the system, just move that stuff aside. Put in your own versions that edit out your entries, and then you should be good to go. Questions? Yeah.
Have you seen Cheswick's paper called An Evening with Burford?
Mm-hmm.
Is that recommended reading, do you think?
Recommended reading. Well, yeah, I would suggest Cheswick's There Be Dragons is another good one. An Evening with Burford. These are kind of papers that kind of laugh at the mistakes of a silly hacker, you know. So it's not really a whole lot of lessons to be learned on breaking into systems, but it's a very interesting lesson to be learned on what goes out on the other side and how they do keep track of people, and they keep track of you very, very carefully at times. I've seen some really good traps set up to catch people. Other suggested reading, I don't know. Just, you know, I would read everything I can on security, on any of the security news groups, any of the FRAC or other stuff. I don't know. Yeah.
Does Zardoz live?
Zardoz was a mailing list.
And core.
Well, there's something called Zardoz and Zardoz Core. I just got a call from Neil, who used to run the Zardoz list, and he said, you know, Dan, I really want to start up Zardoz again. And Zardoz was a place where you could toss security bugs, and it was great because, you know, all the system crackers would grab this and, you know, use the latest things. You know, and no matter how small the core group got, where you got the really neat stuff, you know, the information always seemed to leak out somewhere, you know. But he said, you know, he really wanted to put it out again, and it's a nice idea. But if you're going to put out the information, you must just put it out to everyone. And he wanted to know the latest news on some bugs and some this and some that. And so I just kind of pushed him aside and let the poor thing die. I mean, there's better ways to do things, I think, in my opinion at least. Full of questions today.
What's your favorite news group?
Favorite news group? Well, all sex bondage is always.
Discussion to security-related matters.
Well, there's security myth, and there's alt security, and there's comp.risks, and there's one of the comp UNIX wizards or whatever it's called now, you know, whatever the wizard group is. Those all have various things. Sun managers. If you're not on Sun managers mailing list, get on the mailing list, because they there's a recent security bug in what was it? EX Preserve or something. I don't remember which one it was. And they posted the full information on it. And oftentimes there'll be some really good information that goes out to these lists. And so, you know, if you're really interested in getting information, read as much as you can, because, you know, read as much technical stuff as you can, because that's where the real information is.
Is that your favorite mailing list?
My favorite? No, my favorite mailing list is another unmentionable one. So we'll move on from there. Any other questions?